In this video I want to give you a short overview over the CC4D Material Setup. The CC4D Material Setup is a tool to quickly replace the default materials of a character exported from Character Creator and imported with the FBX file with some predefined Redshift material templates from the CC4D asset browser content. It will then populate those material templates with its respective textures located in the same directory as the character FBX file. And if a JSON configuration file is provided, it will also populate the materials with the material parameters set up in Character Creator. But let's go through it step by step and first have a look at the materials in Character Creator and how to export a configuration file. In Character Creator I have already loaded the CC4 Kevin CC avatar from the content library, which I will use for this example. Under the Material tab of the Modify panel you can find a list of all of the character's objects with the materials assigned to them and their respective shader types. But the only thing to make sure here is that there are no doubling material names or double material assignments. Give each material assigned to an object a unique name even if you use a material on multiple objects. Otherwise the setup may not replace the materials correctly and you can still remove the duplicated materials once the setup is done. Now let's go to File, Export, FBX and choose Clothed Character. For the export settings, let's select Cinema 4D as the target tool preset and the FBX option mesh. And let's open up the advanced export settings by clicking the little gear or sun icon in the top right corner. Here you can check this little checkbox to export a JSON configuration file for the Auto Material Setup. This way all of the materials' names, assignments, shader types, texture paths and parameters are stored within this file and will then be utilized by the CC4D Material Setup. Now also make sure to not embed any of the textures. Optionally you can uncheck Bake Diffuse and Specular Maps from digital human hair and skin color if you plan to use the CC4D advanced materials in Cinema 4D in combination with the parameters exported from Character Creator. If you only want to use the basic materials in Cinema 4D, you can leave this checked. Last but not least, make sure the character gets exported in its bind pose, and then we can export the character and head over to Cinema. In Cinema 4D, let's quickly import the character with the CC4D Import Character tool. In the File dialog, I will select the FBX I just exported, and here I can also see the JSON configuration file. Regarding the import settings, I will leave everything as default, which will remove the morph targets and import the character with its default materials. Once the character has been imported and I select the CC character null object that has been created as the root object of the character, I can see that both the path to the FBX file and the path to the JSON file have been stored under the Config tab. Before we move on to the materials, I will quickly add a lighting setup to the scene I created earlier, just to have some lighting going on for when I want to do a preview render of the character. It is basically just a 3-point lighting setup in combination with an infinite light, a subtle dome light and a secondary dome light for the background, similar to the default lighting setup from Character Creator. I will select all the elements of this lighting setup and add it to a new layer. This way I can simply hide everything in the viewport and in the object manager, so it's not getting in my way when I work with the character. Now let's have a look at the materials. As I imported the character with its default materials, those are basically just the materials that are automatically generated by Cinema 4D when importing a FBX file. They may have some texture nodes in them, but it will only be a fraction of the textures exported from Character Creator, and some of them will also be connected to the completely wrong input port. A quick preview by turning on the Redshift IPR in the viewport also shows that the out-of-the-box result is not that great and definitely needs some work to be improved. This is where the CC4D Material Setup comes in. To replace the materials of a character, you can either select one or multiple objects to only replace the materials of those objects. You can select one or multiple materials to only replace those. Or you could clear the selection and select nothing at all to replace all of the character's materials at once. Let's click the CC4D Material Setup icon in the toolbar. The first thing the setup will do is trying to locate the character's JSON configuration file and the character's texture in FBM folders. If the setup cannot find these folders, you will get an error message. If no configuration file was found or provided in the first place, you get the option to select one manually or continue the process without it, which I will show you in a second. If both the texture locations and the configuration file have been recognized successfully, you will see a dialog where you can select the material type. Let's go with the basic type for now and run the material setup. Each material will then be replaced with its respective shader template from the CC4D asset browser content based on its name and its shader type from the configuration file. So for example, every material that had the skin shader assigned to it in Character Creator will be replaced with the basic skin material template. Those replaced materials will then be populated with the character's textures. By enabling the Redshift IPR again in the viewport, I can check if everything worked correctly. Regarding the material type, the basic materials are simply some Redshift standard materials with some predefined texture and node setups. Now let's take a quick look at the advanced materials by deselecting everything and simply running the CC4D Material Setup one more time. Only this time I'm going to select the advanced material type. And again, the setup will replace all the materials in the scene, but this time with the advanced material template from the CC4D asset browser content. To see if everything worked correctly, I can quickly activate the Redshift IPR preview again. The main difference between the basic and the advanced materials is that, while the basic materials only consist of RS standard materials with its default parameters and the base textures exported from Character Creator, the advanced materials are using a lot more textures and hold a custom CC4D shader group. Those shader groups are holding predefined node setups and custom parameters to resemble the shaders from Character Creator as closely as possible and to be able to use the settings from the configuration JSON file. And as those group nodes are the start node of the material node graphs, the inputs and parameters can also be found under the Inputs tab in the Attributes panel when a material is selected. You can learn more about the basic as well as the advanced materials and their parameters in the documentation. Here I have another example character that was exported without a JSON configuration file and again imported with the CC4D import character tool. And when I select the CC character null object, you can see that only the character's FBX file path has been stored under the config tab. The first thing that will happen when I'm going to run the CC4D Material Setup now is that a dialog will show up stating that no configuration file could be found. Now I have the option to either open up a file dialog and select one manually by clicking OK, or to continue the setup without a configuration file by clicking Cancel. The script will then try to locate the character's texture folders based on the FBX file path defined under the config tab of the CC character null object or the scenes file location. If this is successful, I can again select the material type and run the material setup. And again, all of the characters' materials will be replaced with the respective shader template from the CC4D asset browser content, but this time based on an internal default configuration, as no custom character configuration file has been provided. But the correct shader assignment without a configuration JSON file will only work if the materials use the default character creator naming conventions. All materials that are not within this naming convention will be replaced with the PBR shader template. This will also work for the advanced materials, and most of the textures will be connected to the materials even if no configuration file has been provided. But all the material parameters will be set to their default values. But even though the script can work without a configuration file, it's definitely recommended to export a JSON configuration file with your character from Character Creator to get the best results. I hope this helps to give you a general overview over the CC4D Material Setup, but if you have any questions or issues, let me know in the comments or feel free to drop me a line to cc4dtools@gmail.com.